Good morning, everyone. Welcome again to Sunrise Daily today. I'm Chamberlain. What's up?
Yes, we're up bright and early. It's a beautiful Tuesday morning from here in Lagos. I'm Kayadoki Kulu.
I was actually going to rescue you today.
From beautiful.
Yeah.
It's always beautiful.
Good morning and welcome. I'm Ayo Makine. I'm talking about beautiful.
Don't rescue me from beautiful.
You love the beautiful.
No. Just leave me there. Let me wallow in that one. I prefer about the name.
Well, it was, would we say it's a beautiful statement? Yes, a development, thank you, from INEC yesterday with the release of that statement by the INEC Electoral Commissioner who is in charge of the INEC spokesman, who said that INEC may blacklist political parties over violent congresses, not violent elections, violent congresses. And that's quite interesting. But the question that one would want to ask, first of all, is it the beginning of an end to electoral violence in the country? Is it even
that will be the day.
Scratching the surface? Now, here are some of the things that the statement says. Says, there will be far-reaching consequences in any situation where party congresses and conventions degenerate into violence and destruction of INEC property. It says, apart from replacing such destroyed materials, in other words, the parties will replace the materials, parties may be blacklisted from the receipt of INEC materials for their activities in the future. The Commission may also withdraw its staff from monitoring such violent political party meetings with the resultant non-recognition of their outcomes. The question that I would want to ask is, how far-reaching can this be?
I think this is a no-brainer, really. And I wonder, why hasn't this been done? Why is this a development now? Because we've had violent elections for as long, as you could recall, from 1999. You've had pockets of, and it seems like it gets progressively worse. So INEC saying this now, yes, it's good, but I question why this has never even been a thing in the past. And how enforceable is it? I take note of the term may. It might mean you need to have overwhelming evidence. But, if this is, enforced retrospectively, then I know most of the political parties, especially the major political parties, we've seen, pockets of violence in their primaries, should be reprimanded. I think everybody should support INEC on this. But my question is, how will that may turn to will? That's a big question.
Well, it will. It can't turn to may if the laws are amended.
Another may.
If the laws are amended. If the electoral laws don't allow them to do that, they can't do it.
But plain
and simple.
I think to a large extent that, the conduct of the elections, pre-election, during election and post-election was the reason for it in the first place. So I don't know.
Reason for what? For this?
Yeah, I mean, INEC, it's part of the process.
There's been some congresses too that have been going in a funny way. So they thought, no. Look, if we continue like this way, you keep putting our men in harm's way. So they won't want to see that moving forward. But they just want answers to that. The electoral laws.
No, I get it. We had this conversation, was it last week? We were saying that electoral violence, is a product of activities of political parties. I think it was as a result, we were talking about, the effect that came from a particular judgment. And we remember talking about the fact that, look, would that action be necessary in the first place if political parties weren't complicit? I think that is the fulcrum of all of this. Now, if we get the process right from the angle of political parties, will we still have the kind of challenges that we have post-election, to such that, it'll get all the way to the judiciary? Yes, we were talking about, the judiciary being the one to adjudicate, so to speak, over certain things that will return some people into office. So the question I'm asking is, if it is possible to ensure that political parties do the right things, do what is needed and necessary at any given point, will we even get to the point where we are saying there is electoral violence to the point that we had in Kogi and a number of other states all over the nation?
Well, don't sweat it. The laws are there, and the laws are to be enforced. So if the laws permit them to do those things, and if the authorities, if they violate the laws and they don't enforce the laws, what do you expect? They've done it before. They feel we can do it again. Because after all, how did those who are supposed to enforce it get there? We put them there. They are our cronies. Is it from the political thugs up until who? Even the recruitment in the agencies, we put our cronies there.
We did?
Yeah, we in parentheses. So when they put their cronies there, what do you expect? So it's up to the people to actually say, look, these things need to change. And by the way, what's happened to the Electoral Act? Anybody heard any amendments going on lately?
Well, I know there were deadlines.
How many months to elections now?
Oh dear.
So there you go. So we know what to do, but should we just keep ending up with promissory notes, because that's what it appears right now. The National Assembly told us that we're going to amend that. You expected it was going to be some of the first things that they would do, hitting the ground running. But here we are, the 20th of April, 2021, and we're still on this matter. Well, need to say more on this one, but you'll see some of it in the dailies, which we're going to delve right into. We'll start with Nigerian Tribune this morning. It's a big matter, which was all over the place yesterday. Judiciary, legislature, autonomy. That's another bone of contention. So, yeah, something was supposed to have been done about it, but how to proceed appears to be where certain things need to be ironed out. But look at what Tribune says. Governors say agreements reached, implementation set for May. So, and then autonomy for judiciary, non-negotiable. Senate tells governors. Lawyers in solidarity protest nationwide. FG meets striking judicial workers today. And it was all, the image of the NBA Ikeja branch in that solidarity march. That's what we're talking about. The front page of Nigerian Tribune here today. And speaking about elections, they've got 2023 politicians investing in VC's appointment will be disappointed. Charges governing councils, chairman to restore stability in UI, Uniport, Unilag. Remember that prof from University of, is it? University of Uyo, is it Calabar?
Yeah, I think he was involved in the election.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That, when the law
He was convicted.
came down hard on him. And then there's another one that's also on the going through in Akwa Ibom. So, there you go. If they will go ahead and enforce that, then you just might see some more, maybe if you will send any message. And speaking about some of those issues you highlighted in the opening, INEC gets tough over PDP's acrimonious congresses, threatens to withdraw personnel. So that matter you equally see right there. And then everyone's talking about judicial strike, when and why lawyers revolt. What about, who's going to write about when and why the press
Who's going to even
revolts?
publish that? That won't be published anyway because
After the revolt?
Oh goodness.
No, maybe publish it the day of before
day
the revolt.
before.
Then revolt.
Then who will disseminate it on
So
the
let
day?
them read it afterwards.
To be very honest, I hope that never happens.
Well, they also hope judicial strike will never happen. So, if wishes were horses.
Oh, definitely.
But I guess my right.
I can't imagine the media going on strike.
Yeah, well,
I can't.
life happens, I guess. You know what they say about that.
I mean, even during COVID, the media.
I can't imagine it. Man, the level of impunity will skyrocket.
Oh dear. Okay. As we grapple with that, it's hard to think about that. Take a look at the front page of Vanguard newspaper. 50 billion naira FAC shortfall. Oh yes, it's still in the news. We declined governor's request to borrow from CBN. It's coming from the FG. Is this... Okay. Well, let me give you the riders. March allocation fell by 50 billion naira. Governors asked to live within their means. Finance minister. So you see,
Whoa.
this is still huge story.
Suggesting that it was the governors who told us, go get this.
And we said no, right?
Wow.
Definitely, this is not the end of this.
I thought the same finance minister, they said nothing of sort happened.
So maybe now she's giving a rejoinder or elaborating on what exactly happened.
Oh boy. Whose report do we believe now?
Well, the reports that we put out.
Okay.
Don't forget, there's a difference between fact and truth. Okay, so...
Say what?
Yes, there's a difference between fact and truth. That's why you have two different facts in courts.
Okay.
And the judge determines the truth.
Well, the fact and truth of the matter is that there must writers on the front page of the Vanguard. So let me get into it. Adds government aims to triple revenue ratio, or ration rather, to 15% of GDP. And NGF deliberately mute on issue of printing money. Fire me. So clearly, we've not heard the last of this. And the question a lot of Nigerians are asking is, what exactly is going on? Can we just see things transparently? I mean, we've been hearing different statements, a lot of them contradictory, and yet this is coming out. What exactly is going on?
You know, I hope they remember that while all of this is going on, they have several investors, the financial world. They look to the comments that certain people in certain positions make, and it influences their investment decisions.
Hugely.
Remember what they say about capital. Capital is a coward. It flees when it's threatened. And so if some of those statements just keep going out like that, you never can tell the kind of effect it will have, because you just may not know. So they need to be cautious about all of these things.
Yeah, because messaging is key.
Yeah.
But you see this one, mayhem in Anambra, Abia, 9 dead, Zone 13 Police HQ attacked. 2 policemen, 3 others killed as gunmen attacked Zone 13 Police HQ in Anambra.
There seems to be a trend now in the southeast now. They're hitting those security formations. And so what message are they trying to pass across?
And recall that Abia, just right after that Imo attack.
The shutdown, certain things, right?
So it was as though they saw this coming. But, well, you have more details on page 13. What is this about? This is a dangerous trend. I mean, they're not hitting banks or individuals. They're hitting police formations. And besides, a symbol of authority.
Those arms that have been carted away, there's no report yet as to whether or not they've been recovered.
As to how many they are in the first place, in whose hands they are, when, if at all, will they ever be... And you know, we continue to undulate around this issue of intelligence. Is it that the people, the police formations didn't know that these things were going to happen? I can't believe it.
I mean, for you to have the mind to hit a police formation, that speaks volumes.
Look, you may know for what you do if you can't help yourself.
Okay. There are a lot of stories on the front page of the Vanguard, really.
Don't Amrabas write estates and streets. We're coming to rob you, and they come. Oh, come on.
Oh, dear.
Welcome to the world. Our world.
Help yourself to, I mean, a lot of other stories on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper. There's that Judicial strike as well, refineries, there's Mr. and Mrs. Oh, okay, let me just take Mr. and Mrs. For the culture, right?
Yes.
You see, Mr. saying, thanks for agreeing with me that money is not everything. And Mrs. is walking away as though she's not having any of that, saying, who's agreeing with you? You that somebody gave a bounce check of 20,000 naira and you almost, or rather, you lost weight overnight. Clearly, money is everything to you, right? And that's Mr. and Mrs. Don't forget there's sports on the back page. Raw ready to coach Bordeaux. What does that mean? But yeah, and you see that Mourinho's compensation. You know, he's been in Chelsea, Real Madrid, Chelsea, Manchester United, Tottenham. And there's you know, a crunching of the figures he left with. So is he really losing out the special one? Well, you might beg to differ. But let's leave it there for the Vanguard newspaper.
Come by ranch. The Guardian newspaper is next, and it leads with this one. Pressure on disposable incomes as unemployment doubles. Guys, again, we're here. Only 46.4 million Nigerians with jobs. In a population of 206 million, according to the AFDB president, and a working population of about half that number. OPS...
100 million.
About half or more. OPS seek definitive action as inflation compounds household woes. What definitive action? I guess you may want to check the inside pages of the Guardian. Well, the story begins on the front page, actually.
I think it's insightful that, you know, the head of the budget office was speaking about food inflation being majorly responsible for the inflation we're seeing.
Yeah.
So we know what the problem is, right? We know it's food. If you can, I mean, there's a Yoruba saying that if you take away hunger from a man's problem, that you've solved.
Poverty is
largely
greatly depleted.
So how about we focus on that food area and just say, you know what, we need to ensure food is available. I mean, if you sort that, then I think most of our problems will be sorted.
My challenge here, Kayode, is we look at solving the problems of today, but we don't look at what's the implication of the problem of today on tomorrow. Because if we don't solve tomorrow's problem before tomorrow comes, today's problem is worse.
Okay.
You know, the Guardian newspaper also has, right under the picture you see there, again, twin attacks rock police divisions in Abia, Anambra. The writers will probably give you a little more insight. 2 policemen killed, buildings, vehicles razed. Gunmen used dynamites, rocket launchers, says Abia PPRO. IPOB denies involvement. Minister condemns attack on zonal headquarters. Nigeria under siege by non-state actors, Senate laments. 70% of 500 million illegal weapons in West Africa found in Nigeria. Wow. Who said that? You may want to find out on the front page. It continues on page 2 of the Guardian newspaper this morning. Markwe?
Well, let's look at leadership for you. Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning, Nigerians. Let's look at leadership for you here. And you see on the front page a very disturbing story. It's the leading story, like a warning of some sort. Rising attacks on police may lead to full-scale insurgency in Southeast. That's the gong that the leadership is sounding this morning. Rising attacks on police may lead to full-scale insurgency in Southeast. Look at this quote. This is an attribute of insurgency where they begin to attack government institutions. The aim is to weaken the military and make people afraid and lose confidence in government. This is exactly what they're doing. You might want to know who's speaking. You might need to flip somewhere inside leadership newspapers to see if the insurgency we have in the northeast of the country isn't enough. And banditry, making its way from the northwest to north central and going down southwest isn't enough. We still have this one on our hands. Look at this. Timeline of police attacks or of attacks on policemen and police facilities in the southeast and south regions. Excuse me. So the leadership has done the hard work. They have decided to collate these numerous attacks. They're numbering, they're definitely more than about 15 of them here, starting from the 8th of January to the 19th of April. That's just yesterday. They have at least the significant ones that have been reported right here on the front page. Look at this story. Judicial autonomy, governors cave in as protests heighten. That's also on the front page as well. Afaka 39, we paid 17 million to secure release of students. That's according to the parents of those students who were released. Don't forget that some of them are still in captivity. So that story is still one to watch. What will happen to those still in captivity, especially since the governor of the state says, no, our policy is no ransom payment. But does it preclude negotiations of other kinds, maybe by other non-state actors? I don't know. Very difficult questions to answer, but let's leave it there for leadership newspapers.
Yeah, I mean, even the one where you were saying the prison break. They said that about 9 of those prisoners who are suspected to be inmates from Dawa prison were arrested in Ghana. So there you go. Well, look at blueprints this morning. Senate on insecurity. Nigeria under siege of murderous non-state actors. The blueprint leads with that this morning. Says 350 million of 500 million West Africa's illegal weapons in our country. We either take measures or watch them overrun us. Gunmen kill 3. Bandits, doctors snapped in Kaduna. So day on day, every time you see these kind of stories, and the warnings keep coming all over the place, and you keep asking, look, what are we doing about all of these things? So now we know, because these warnings are upon us. So you see, we can't feign ignorance about some of these things, but what are we doing about them remains the big question. That's the big one on Blueprints this morning.
Take a look at Nigerian News Direct. Lead story concerns petrol. It's just a lot, really. You see, no increase in ex-depot price in May, NMPC. I mean, some of the stories just creep up on you and you wonder, where did you come from? How did we get here? But, I mean, the NMPC is saying no increase in ex-depot price in May. I know you may be thinking, well, you've heard this before and, you know, you still saw things happen.
Is it like a switch? You switch it on today, next month you switch it off, the month after you put it back on. No increase today, okay, well, there's increase next month. Or none the following month, and none in 3 months to come. Yes, there'll be in 4 months' time. Is that how it works these days?
Clearly, that's how a lot of Nigerians see it. And but page 14, or 16 rather, should shed more light on this. It's just a lot. And you see, Sanwo-Olu commends police officer assaulted in viral video that made the rounds yesterday. I mean, the video started making rounds way before that, but the governor responded, honored the police officer, and well, I saw a ray of hope in that, and well, the coming days, I really hope that that hope is not extinguished. A couple of other stories. You see, I will change the narrative of Nigeria's internal security, acting IGP vows as he meets Buhari. So we'll hold him to that, definitely. That's Nigeria News Direct.
Well, the Daily Trust newspaper is interested in something that the DG of Budget Office said yesterday, and we've referenced as well. Inflation. Nigerians groan as food prices skyrocket. I wonder if there's an end or a limit to the sky. Food inflation now 22.95% according to NBS. Workers lament static pay amidst price hike. Well, I guess that's the lead story of the Daily Trust newspaper and so many others right there. Well, right under the picture, Pantami, when the past eats the future. It's on page 3. Markwe?
Well, we have this one. New Telegraph is still here. And look at this story. I mean, if this doesn't alarm you, I don't know what will. Insecurity. Nigeria's corporate existence under threat. That's from the Senate. You see it right there on the front page. It says 350 million of 500 million illegal weapons in West Africa domiciled in Nigeria. Okay. 350, I don't know who did the count or, you know, what research they're relying on, but if we're to go with these figures, and we always say they were around 200 million, and we have about 350 million illegal weapons in Nigeria alone, is it any surprise, you know, that we're facing the situation that we're currently facing? And the current calls now that perhaps individuals should be allowed to carry weapons. I don't know how that conversation is going to go. Maybe there will be a continuation, but you might want to see details of what that story was about on page 2. Sani Amao Difa on fine for illegal possession of firearms is a page 2 read. Southeast governors floated a Bubagu for personal interest. That's according to CNPP scribe. Says security meeting held without DSS police officials. That story is also there. COVID-19 states tax revenue fell by 40% in 2020. That's according to governors. This is in time for vaccine nationalism, federal government tells United States. You have a number of other stories there, that one which you highlighted earlier. Violent congresses, INEC threatens to blacklist parties. Let's see whether they will not go to courts. But, I mean, we have to have a country first before we have elections, don't we? Gentlemen,
Yeah, and then the Daily Times ends with governors, legislators, judiciary agree pact on financial autonomy, the same way that several other dailies did highlight this morning. So there you go, 350 million or 500 million.
And we're just 200 million.
So each person has an average of one.
Oh, goodness.
And more.
Well, back in a moment. Don't go away.
Well, it started small, but it seems to be gaining prominence now, like a wildfire of some sort. So we heard initially that judiciary workers are going to go on strike for financial autonomy, but it wasn't the first time we had heard it. But this time around, it looks like they mean business. And you can see right there that they have support of lawyers. I don't know if the lawyer we have in our studio with us is one of those who's supporting them this morning, but we have Mr. Sebastian Han, who is a senior advocate of Nigeria. You're welcome to Sunrise Elite this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, what's this about, this strike? For a number of people, they're wondering, judiciary staff workers going on strike about financial autonomy. Why now?
Well, I believe that they obtained a judgment way back in 2014 to secure financial independence for the judiciary. And I also remember that respected senior lawyer, Olisa Agbakoba, SN, also obtained a similar judgment. And they have been waiting in the wings, trying to secure enforcement of these judgments to no avail. So I believe that they decided to now see to it that the judgments are enforced. That is why they are trying to not just boycott the courts, but also to picket some public institutions to ensure that the judgment is enforced.
It is a very, I mean, when we see our judiciary work and the judiciary totally grounded, it does call for concern and it does call for, you know, a introspection. First and foremost, to ask why it has been very difficult to implement autonomy for the judiciary, and what exactly, how has it affected adversely, you know, activities within the judiciary? That's the non-implementation of financial autonomy.
Well, you see that under the doctrine of the rule of law, financial independence for the judiciary stands out as the major component. Now, if you don't have financial independence, even as an individual, then you will never perform or be impartial. You will have to be running helter-skelter looking for funds or trying to please one person or the other. So financial independence for the judiciary is a major component of the rule of law. And the absence of that in Nigeria for a long time has affected justice delivery and the quality of judgments delivered by our regular courts. So I'm in support of the strike, but I have some points that may differ from the drift, the general drift in what is really going on.
What's the drift that you have?
Well, my position is that if you look at all the relevant provisions of the 1999 Constitution as amended, it is not the state governors or governments that are supposed to implement independence of superior courts of record. Because if you look at Section 6, subsections 1, 3, and 5 of the Constitution, in fact, subsection 1 says, the judicial powers of the Federation shall be vested in the courts listed in this section, being courts established for the Federation. For the Federation. Now, if you go to subsection 3, it states that the courts so listed as superior courts of record. Now, if you also go to subsection 5, the courts are now listed, starting from the Supreme Court to the Court of Appeal, to the Federal High Court, to the National Industrial Court, to the State High, FCT High Court, to the State High Courts, Sharia Courts of Appeal, Customary Courts of Appeal. So these are courts established for the Federation. Now, that is the beginning point. And if you also look at the provisions relating to control over public funds, namely sections 80 to 89 of the Constitution, you will discover that under section 80, no monies come into the federation account, into the coffers of Nigeria, except they go straight to the federation account. And then under section 81, subsection 1, the president presents and lays before the National Assembly budgetary estimates, being expenditure, both capital and recurrent, to be spent for that year. Now, if you now go to subsection 3 of section 81, it is provided that all monies standing to the credit of the judiciary shall be disbursed to the National Judicial Commission for distribution to the heads of the courts of the various courts established under section 6. That is where the link comes in. Now, if you go back to section 6 as a recap, you will now discover that state high courts are there, Sharia courts of appeal are there, customary courts of appeal are there. And therefore, if we are talking of the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the Federation, state governors have no power over that one. And there is also no provision in the Constitution, the entire Constitution, that says that state governors must ensure compliance, judicial independence for superior courts of record. I have just pointed that one that has to do with the federal government. Now, further, if you go to section 162, subsection 9 of the Constitution, you will discover that a similar provision was replicated by the framers of the Constitution. But the Supreme Court, in its own wisdom, in the case of Attorney General of Abia State against Attorney General of the Federation, which was the resource control suit, if we rekindle our memories, decided in 2002 that that section is superfluous, having regard to section 83, subsection 3, because it is a replication of that earlier section word for word. But the only difference in that later provision was that he said all money standing to the credit of the judiciary in the federation account should be disbursed through the NJC to the heads of the various courts.
That's section 121.3.
No, I'm coming to section 121.3. I'm progressing and coming there.
Okay.
Yes. So the Supreme Court said that no, there can't be any first-line charge on money standing in the federation account. There can only be first-line charge on money standing in the Consolidated Fund, Revenue Fund of the Federation. So that section was rendered nebulous or superfluous by the Supreme Court. Nevertheless, the Supreme Court affirmed the provisions of section 83, subsection 3. Now, to your question, there's so much frenzy about section 121, subsection 3 of the Fourth Alteration Act, which came into force in 2018. It was actually enacted in 2017, but the president signed it in 2018. So it came into force in 2018. That section has not detracted from what has been in the Constitution. What has been in the Constitution, if you look at the original section 121, is that the A and B being separated in the new section, now were joined together for the judiciary and the State House of Assembly. So, but mind you, the words used in that, even in that section 121 sub 3 of the now altered section 121, that's a new section.
Amended.
Yes, the amended is semantic. It's a matter of semantics. If you look at that one, it makes reference to the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the states. So now, let me explain. Looking at the Constitution under Chapter 5, Chapter 5 deals with the executive. Part 1 deals with the federal executive. No, that is the legislature. Yes. Part A deals with the National Assembly. Part B deals with the State Houses of Assembly. Now, if you look at sections 80 to 89 of the Constitution, that is where you will see the powers of the National Assembly over public funds. If you look at sections 121 to 129 of the same Constitution, you will now see the powers of the State Houses of Assembly over funds from the states. So there's nothing new about what was introduced in Section 121, subsection 3, by the Fourth Alteration Act. So, what I'm saying is that the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the Federation is different from the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the states.
The states, okay.
Now, complementarily to this, if you look at the third schedule, Part A, in particular paragraph 21.
I have to interrupt you.
Very well.
And that's, for the sake of our viewers, just for those who are wondering, this is not a law lecture. You have to break it down for our viewers as simply as they can. But let me just quickly read what it is that has caused the controversy, which is Section 121, subsection 3, that says all money standing to the credit of the judiciary in the state shall be paid to the heads of court. It's as simple as that. That's the only line, it would seem, or that's the major line which seems to be causing controversy as to why that particular clause cannot be fulfilled, by the state governors. But you seem to be saying that, no, that doesn't lie within the power of the state governors. I want to believe that's your argument.
Very well. I want to qualify it.
Okay, just before you qualify it,
yes.
Who has the power then to fulfill, this particular stance of the Constitution?
It is the National Judicial Commission, the NJC. Let me go back.
The NJC is the one who you believe should be held responsible for financial autonomy in the states.
No, yes, for state high courts,
yes,
Sharia courts of appeal and customary courts of appeal. Then the state governors will take charge of the magistrates, the chief registrars, the area courts, the district courts. That is the intention of the Constitution.
But as we speak today, is the NJC getting its own monies to even run itself as an institution from first line charge?
Very well.
Are they?
Because if you look at paragraph, that was where I was going to. If you look at the third schedule to the Constitution, paragraph 21E, it defines the powers of the NJC. It says the NJC has power to collect, to control, and to distribute all capital and recurrent expenditure for the judiciary.
Is it currently doing that?
Well, I suppose so. It is doing that. But my problem is that it is not doing that for capital projects in compliance with all the other sections I quoted before. If you look at section 6, 1, 3, and 5, these courts are established for the federation. Mark you, for the federation. Then the Consolidated Revenue Fund is also for the federation. And then in particular, section 81 sub 3 says that all money standing to the credit of the judiciary shall be disbursed to the NJC for onward distribution to the heads of the courts of the federation and of the states. It is clear.
Okay, let's quickly, flip this to Lagos now. Well, we have another guest. Gentlemen, you want to introduce your guest?
Yes, indeed. Mr. Mondo Bani is the former second vice president of the NBA. He joins us this morning. Good morning, and thank you for coming on today. Well, having heard the position of Leonard colleague, your colleague, what is your impression about how some of these laws stand today?
I may not want to delve into the technicalities of my learned senior. I've listened to him carefully. If you give me opportunity to interpret and give a clearer picture of what should obtain, there is an anomaly, quite all right, with the issue of NJC controlling the state courts. Ordinarily, if you have a state high court, one would expect that the state government should be the one to do all the necessary, including this issue of any money standing to the credit of the state consolidated revenue.
State government, not the NJC?
Not the NJC. That's if you have a proper federation that is being run. I mean, we don't need the federal government agency to be controlling the state high court. But you see, it's a part of the anomaly we're talking about. The NJC is the one now who does the control, who does the appointment, and then recommend to a state governor that does the confirmation of the appointment of a judge in the state. So, but to me, to simplify this operation of payment to the state high court, I would want it to leave it the way it is couched in section 81 subsection 3. if there is any money standing to the credit of the judiciary, that is state judiciary now, the consolidated revenue fund, that money should be paid to the heads of the state court. Let's not complicate issue now. If there is any alteration to be done later about the constitution, maybe all those niceties will come in. For me now, the interpretation is let the federal government at this federal level control the federal judiciary, and it's going on with the NJC now. This wasn't money that belonged to them directly to the heads of the various courts at the federal level. But then let the state government disburse any money that is standing to the credit of a consolidated revenue fund of the state. Give this money to the heads of the state judiciary so that we don't complicate issues. Maybe, as I said earlier, when there will be an amendment of the constitution, all those niceties that my learned son has pointed out may be strengthened. But for now, to avoid any complication, I'm very happy that the governors have agreed to implement the issue of financial autonomy. Let's do it the way it ought to be done. Let the money that stands to the credit of the state judiciary be given to the heads of the state judiciary. Why that of the federal there has not been issue with the issue of financial autonomy at the federal level. We don't have any problem there.
You know, what they have agreed to implement, I think it will be clearer when they speak or when that begins. Because at the moment, there seems to be divergent opinions about how exactly it will be. Now, when you say all monies due should be given to them, because there's talk in some quarters that, does that then mean that the judiciary will begin to execute capital projects besides them just sticking to overheads? Is that the intendment of the law, the drafters?
That should be the intendment of the law. We have three arms of government. Even when you were in secondary school, it's three arms that run pure democracy. You have the judiciary, you have the executive, and you have the legislative. If the executive runs his capital and the recurrent expenditure, and the other arms of government should likewise run their capital and recurrent expenditure. I see no reason why you will now give only recurrent expenditure for the judiciary to run, and they will not run their capital. Because I have seen a situation where the governors are the one buying cars and building houses.
Exactly. Let me just jump in.
And that is a wrong procedure. Yes.
So the thing now is, if there wasn't any bone of contention, why did he, if they've agreed now to do some of these things, why do you think that it's taking this long in spite of the agreements?
Yeah, it came late. It came late, but it's better late than never. You know, the issue is that...
No, does that mean that all of those other issues have been ironed out, that they will go ahead and implement it?
I have that belief, because I don't think that they have raised any issue. Yesterday, they caved in this. That's the report. And they have agreed now that there should be financial autonomy to the judiciary, as well as the parliament. So they have probably, what they would need now, according to them, is to work out the modalities of the operation. And that's why they're asking for next month, May, being the time they will implement it. My brother Chamberlain, I see no reason why we have delayed so much. But somebody also has pointed out that the governors actually wanted a situation where they will be in total control of the other two arms of government. And that's why Nigerians have not been getting good governance, both at the judicial level, both also at the parliamentary level. These governors, when they come in, they want to control the State House of Assembly. They determine who becomes the speaker, and fail to give them that particular independence they require in order to checkmate what goes on at the executive level. That has been the decision. But
Bani, just one moment.
Yes.
I'm going to rephrase and insist, for something that's chewable for us from what question Chamberlain asked you the other time. Why has it taken this long for a governor who swore to uphold the Constitution to flagrantly disregard that same Constitution, especially the issues that you have raised?
Yes.
There is a law, there's a Constitution, there is a judgment, and then there is an executive order. Why has it taken this long?
Well, I think it's also important you may bring one of the governors of the state, to your panel and then ask that question directly. But if I may, just infer, I think that they were deriving so much pleasure in the undue control they have exerted over the other two arms of government over time. They were enjoying it. I don't know whether you see the fanfare, the kind of joy and excitement whenever these governors buy cars. and build houses for judges, and they will now call the entire press. And they make it look as if, oh, we are doing the judiciary a favor by, buying these cars. This, I have said it here several times, is clearly an aberration. And that issue of controlling the other arms of government is what gives them the kick. They get so excited about it. And that is why, as I said earlier, Nigerians have been denied good governance. And I'm very happy what is actually playing out recently, where Jusun just woke up and said, enough is enough. We have endured this. Some of us have said it here on television or everywhere that it is important we have a judiciary that is clearly independent and autonomous and have the boldness to dispense justice to all manner of men. But over time, these people have always made these other two arms to be very subservient. So bring them here and ask them why. But it's good now they have caved in and I said, look, we want really to obey the constitution that all of us swore when we were sworn in, to uphold. So it is clearly better late than never. But I tell you this, it was this issue of being in charge of the other two arms that have actually made the governors over time to disobey flagrantly the provisions of the constitution.
The statement by the chairman of the NGF saying that there has been no objection from governors to autonomy for the judiciary and legislature, as though saying that we were never against this. So do you hold this as the case for every governor? Was he speaking for himself, or is indeed saying that for all governors in Nigeria there has been no objection?
Yeah, the Nigerian politicians, they're very smart, so anytime they are caught red-handed, they use English most times to confuse people. If you have never objected to the implementation of judicial autonomy, so you ask yourself, all this why have you not? This is not the first time Jusun has gone on strike. This may be either the fourth or fifth times, impressing it upon the governors, please give us the money that belongs to the judiciary. Let them determine how to spend the money. Whether they want to buy cars, they want to buy computers, they want to buy, houses and all that. Let them be the one to do that. And then there are issue of allowances and some other things that has to do with the welfare of the judiciary, which over time the governors have sat upon. So if they have implemented it, why are we now where we are? But as a vice president, we say, so why are we where we are? So,
but in addition to that, about 11 months ago, the NGF, the chair was quoted to have said, look, this is an overkill. There wasn't any need for this section 121, the Executive Order 10. That is an overkill of section 1213 of the 1999 Constitution. So do we necessarily need Executive Order 10 for this to happen?
Well, the issue of executive order means implementation stage. When the Constitution made an elaborate provision, there was no implementation. Some people like Chief Olives Abakaba, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, and even Jusun went to court. And there was pronouncement of the court affirming the position of the Constitution. And, still, these governors refused to budge and implement. And I think it came to the knowledge of the president when there have been discussion and agitation over time that this particular section has never been implemented. And the president said, what do we do? And I think he assembled a panel that gave a recommendation that, look, it's important we make this to be entire country, to be implemented, by the entire state governors. Because it's important we have a judiciary that is actually independent, and including the parliamentarians. So I think the president now came with that executive order in order to implement, because after pronouncement of the court, which has interpreted, what else remains other than implementation? And if people have failed to implement, what are you supposed to do? So I think what the president did, if you remember that some of us came here and eulogized it and commended the president. Some other person say, oh, it is clear and overkill, it's erring on the side of surplusage. But it was better for the president to err on the side of surplusage. But why I have my problem is the same president that signed that executive order, was approached by the governors. And I think I don't know what happened. The president now subpedal or backpedal in implementing his own executive order. So I think that it was implementation stage. That's what the president has actually done by signing that particular executive order. When they refused to implement the Constitution, I think the president was left with no other option other than to sign that executive. So it's not an overkill. It is the stage where we're in now, implementation stage, and which we believe by May. I hope they're not grandstanding. I hope they won't want to deceive the Jusun people to call off the strike. Well, in May now, they will not implement their law. So let it be that let us go to that implementation stage. Can we implement the provisions of the Constitution?
Part of what they did at the time, because I remember the NGF met, and then they mandated the chair to meet to the president and the AGF concerning the interpretation of section 1213. But we'll talk about some of those when we return and more in just a moment. Don't go away.
You're welcome back. Well, Mr. Obani, you heard the chair of ANGF, implementation. That seems to be the issue now. And he says that everybody's speaking on the same page. Is that the sense you get? And what is this thing about implementation, really? So
we're at that level now. As I said earlier, after the executive order, they met the president. And part of the reason they met the president, look, let's work out the modalities. But that working out the modalities took a long time until Judicial went on strike. So I'm sure they are fine-tuning the modalities now. The federal government wanted to, withhold the one that they know they control. And that is why that executive order was actually signed. So since you have refused to implement the law, I'm trying to read the presidency now, or the federal government. Let's now control the money part of the money we give to you at the federal level in every monthly allocation. Let's withdraw our source, since we have refused to implement the constitution. So they knew the implication. They ran to the president and begged him, oh, hold on, let's work out the modalities. So let me believe that they have been working out the modalities. So we are now at the implementation stage, which is pushed forward now by the strike that Judicial has actually called on.
So 2014 judgment. In 2015, Judicial actually went on a strike, just to press on that. And then an executive order. And, I mean, you said it. When we saw that executive order, you thought, oh, everything is done and dusted.
That's correct.
Executive order gives bite. But don't forget that executive order also gives the Attorney General of the Federation, the Accountant General of the Federation, mandates the Accountant General to withdraw or deduct from source if those states fail to ensure autonomy. It's a year now, and that has not happened. What do we make of executive order that has not given a bite then?
In fact, that's why you also bring probably the presidency here in your panel and ask when, after signing an executive order, what stopped it from being implemented? It's so scary.
Does an executive order need another execution order?
Yes, you don't require any execution order to execute an order you have signed. The president signed that order. But here in this government, we hear about body language. Maybe they were waiting for the body language of the president again to direct the Attorney General, to direct the Accountant General to withdraw a source.
No, if I could just add to that.
Yes.
In part of the statements credited to them, after they had met with Malami and the AGF, they said that both parties agreed that some of the modalities were constitutionally flawed. That's it. Autonomy modalities were constitutionally flawed. What does that then mean?
I don't understand what they mean, but I think that what they are trying to say, look, the money that should go to Judiciary at the state level is money that is standing to the credit the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the state. And what constitutes a Consolidated Revenue Fund of the state may include not only the federal allocation they get monthly, it includes also internally generated revenue, I think. So they are now saying, why don't you wait until we have this complete, and then have a complete sum of money that is standing to the credit of the Judiciary at the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the state. That has been the argument. But I also understand the argument of the federal government. Since you have failed to implement the constitutional provision, let us withdraw our source, the one we control, since we are the one that gives the federal government allocation every month. Let's take part of the money that belongs to the judiciary at the federal level to ensure that they have some money in order to operate independently. That is what I understand. But that argument of constitutional violation is what they use to hold the hands of the federal government up to now. But I'm very happy, based upon the statement of Governor Fayemi yesterday, that they will now start to implement that law, by May. And as I said earlier, we are also saying that there should not be any deception whatsoever. After these people may be made to call off the strike, by May we enter into another grammar session, into another meeting and panel setting. No, we will not tolerate that. And that's why the lawyers are totally in support of Judicial this time around. It's about our profession. It's about our country. It's about we being stakeholders. We must get justice, and justice must be gotten when there is clearly independence on the part of Judiciary. It's for everyone, including them who are politicians. They also must enjoy it.
Well, many we don't know what we may enter in May. But let me take this to Mr. On, SAN. Some of the observations that they had fall out of that meeting they had some months ago, where they wanted to iron out some issues. They were quoted to have said, for instance, they thought that there are many extraneous clauses in EO 10, some which they think are in conflict with 1999 Constitution. They say, for instance, Section 77A was talking about that executive order made provisions for a presidential implementation committee to ensure compliance. But then some states already have the appropriation law for the state legislature and the judiciary. So they're wondering, of what essence then is this EO10?
Well, you see, I still maintain my standpoint. I may be alone, but I still maintain my standpoint that the president, the executive order, to me, with due respect, all due respect, is unconstitutional in all ramifications. Because we operate a federal system, and the presidency cannot breathe down orders on the governors. As I pointed out earlier, we have monies going to the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the Federation. We also have monies going to the Consolidated Revenue Funds of the states. And let me go back. If you look at the 1960 Constitution, there was nothing like the agency. 1963 Constitution, there was nothing like the agency. Surprisingly, even 1979 Constitution, there was nothing like the agency. The agency was established under Section 153 of the 1999 Constitution and assigned duties in the third schedule to the Constitution for the first time. So the mischief is that the agency should administer funds for courts established for the Federation. Now, we keep harping on Section 121, upon which the President based his executive order. Is that the only section talking about, is that the only section of the Constitution talking about enforcement of judiciary independence? That's not the only section. Section 81, subsection 3 says the same thing. Agency, you handle monies meant for the heads of the courts and distribute to them. And there's a link between that section 81, subsection 3 and section 6, which has listed those courts. And of course, those courts people call state courts are not actually state courts.
Well,
they are federal courts operating at the state level.
Just one moment,
That is
Mr.
the
Horn.
intendment of section 6 of the Constitution.
Well, if I can just ask
So it
a
is
question.
not possible for the president
Mr. Horn,
just
just
to
one
base
moment.
his judgment on section 121, subsection 3 of the Constitution, which has nothing to do with section 6.
Well, Mr. Horn, if you can hear
it's
me.
difficult for us to see that. The
If you can hear
agency
me.
is the creation of the 1999 Constitution. And these are the problems the legislature saw.
All right, well, Mr.
Before
Horn, just one moment. If you can hear me now, let me just ask a question to follow up on something that you said earlier. Well, it is, I mean, you already said that Executive Order 10 is unnecessary in the light of the Constitution because the president or the federal government does not have the authority to breathe down orders on the governors. And those are your words. But what happens in a situation where the governors themselves are flagrantly disobeying the clear provisions of the Constitution?
You see, now let me take it two ways. I will answer you. The presidency is also, by issuing that order, if that is the intention, breaching the Constitution. Because Section 121 has nothing to do with Section 6 that he wants to enforce.
Well, Mr. Horn, that is already a given. Just one moment. Just one moment. That's already a given. You have already established that fact. But Executive Order 10 is a product of a disobedience, a previous disobedience. So let's talk about that first one. The governors were not obeying the Constitution as far as autonomy for the judiciary was concerned or is concerned. In that light, until now, what necessitated, just a moment, what necessitated that in the first place? And such that the governors had to be compelled by an order of the court or even by an Executive Order 10, which you say is unnecessary, to obey the Constitution they swore to uphold?
I am not saying the governors are right in breaching provisions of the Constitution. But I'm saying that if we don't get it right now, we will compel them to start executing. It will not take long before it crumbles. Apart from that, I have always sought this distinction. The Judicial Service Commissions of the states are the bodies concerned with Section 121. That's a demarcation in the Constitution. In the Constitution, the NJC has to enforce independence of the judiciary as it has to do with federal courts. That is including state high courts, customary courts of appeal, Sharia courts of appeal. Then the Judicial Service Commissions, acting pursuant to Section 121, will now begin to enforce provisions relating to magistrates and other courts on the lower rung of the hierarchy. So we should give this demarcation. If we don't get it right at the beginning, we compare the governors.
Just one moment.
In a non-constitutional manner.
On that same thing, I remember Markwe asked you earlier. Just a moment, Mr. Horn. Earlier, Markwe asked this same question. I mean, you're saying that these levels of authority in the judiciary should implement these provisions. Granted. But do they have the authority to dip their hands into the purse without the authority of the executive, who is supposed to make a first-line charge to them? I think that's what this whole thing is about. So perhaps the process itself is flawed ab initio.
That is why I don't know how clear I will come out. That money for the state's high courts is not supposed to go to the governors. It is supposed to go to the NJC. So, but they have been dipping hands from states' budgets over time in breach of the Constitution. I told you that before 1999, there was nothing like the NJC. But now the constitutional framers, in their own wisdom, created the NJC and said that for the federal courts, including those courts they say they are state courts, you have to prepare their budgets, submit to the federal executive, and then they will disburse monies to you. Then you begin to disburse to the heads of those state courts. So, ab initio, since the beginning of the 1999 Constitution, there has been this breach by all parties because the demarcation is there, but nobody has kept to the demarcation. The NJC is supposed to be implementing budgets, both capital and recurrent, of state high courts, Sharia courts of appeal, customary courts of appeal. I maintain that. It's written clear and clean in the Constitution. Then the governors will now concentrate on the magistrates. If we get it wrong now, as His Excellency Fagbemi, the chairman of the Governors Forum, has considered that they are going to implement, they are going to work out modalities. Let's see how they work out modalities. But if we force them, we will go back to the former situation, which the framers of the Constitution of 1999 wanted to correct. There's this mischief rule of interpretation that was not existing pre-1999. But from 1999, the framers of the Constitution said, look, the governors have been finding it difficult to meet up. Let us create this. If we look at sections 74 to 78 of the 1979 Constitution, the elaborate provisions in sections 80 to 84 are not there. There's nothing like any money standing to the credit of the judiciary shall be disbursed to the NJC, who will now disburse to the heads of the courts. There's no provision like that. And then, as I said, Section 81, subsection 3, links that to Section 6, which has listed all the courts, including the high courts. So I don't know. If we don't get it right now, we may not get it right or true. And we'll go back to that same foundational issue. So I want everybody to appreciate that these are the clear provisions of the Constitution. So the executive order was with respect based on a wrong premise, if that was the intention. And indeed, that was the intention.
So how do we move forward now, especially now that it was seen that the governors have agreed to this implementation, even though you now say that is wrong? How do you want them to, how do you think this can be resolved, given your own, the interpretation you are bringing on board?
All right, what I want from my humble opinion, for us to lay a more solid foundation, it can be revisited. Let them contact their attorneys general, whether what ST Horn is wrong. Looking at the Constitution, if they are well advised, I believe that the president himself doesn't want to act in breach of the Constitution. But all parties have been acting in breach for long. So they now demarcate all other courts which are not federal courts according to Section 6. Governors, you take charge. And by my own understanding of the Constitution, starting from the magistrates, the chief registrars is clearly written there, and all other lower courts. Then, for the other superior courts of records, starting from the High Court, Customary Court of Appeal, Sharia Court of Appeal, Supreme Court, National Industrial Court, Federal High Court, the federal government, through the NJC, should budget for their capital and recurring expenditures. And then we move on. I believe that everybody has been singing restructuring. The framers of the 1999 Constitution saw the wisdom in effecting a form of restructuring.
I'm a little, even though I am still, wondering how this is going to work. Yes, there are high courts in the states. However, states also have their own high courts. Isn't that correct?
No, all these courts are established under Section 6 of the Constitution and under Section 270 of the Constitution. High Court, there shall be established for each state of the Federation a High Court. Section 270. Now, if you now marry that with Section 6, Section 6 of Section 1 says, the following courts shall exercise judicial powers in the Federation, being courts established for the Federation. Now, if you now go to subsection 5, they have now listed the courts, including the High Court. So even though we have state laws establishing high courts, that is done in breach of constitutional covering the field. In terms of constitutional covering the field, for people who may not understand, when the Constitution has provided for a situation, no state law or not even an act of the National Assembly will replicate that. It is unconstitutional.
Well, I guess that would always be a matter for lawyers to deliberate over. But we have to thank you for sharing your thoughts this morning. Mr. Sebastian Hon is a senior advocate of Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you
for speaking with us this morning.
Thank you.
Well, that's why we leave it for this segment. I'll hand it over now to Lagos for the concluding comments.
Yes, just one moment, Chamberlain. Just before we let you go, Mr. Oban, I just want to ask, do we have to go through this rigor for the local government autonomy as well?
We don't, because it's already provided for in the Constitution that any money that belongs to the local government enters into state joint account, and that money should be given to them. Maybe one day we'll wake up now to see the workers at the local government going on strike and grinding government before they will be also allowed to have their financial autonomy. I'm in court presently against all the state government that have refused to conduct a local government election in accordance with the Constitution. Some of them are compliant, but even after compliance, you know what they do? They still operate as if it's a caretaker committee they have just appointed. Of course, there is no election. They are all selected. So I see no reason why we cannot do the right thing in the nation. And because of the fact that we have failed to do the right thing, that's why Nigeria is not making any progress whatsoever. We are retarded. And it pains me that it's a thing that is very clear. I know what my learned senior is saying, Leonard Seyok is saying about the issue of NJC. In the section 121, there was no mention of NJC. It's even an aberration in the first place for the federal government to be controlling state courts. So if we want to amend the Constitution, can we go back and amend the entire thing and make us operate a properly federal system of government as done all over the world? Everything about us is wrong, including the Constitution itself.
I guess we'll see what happens in May, as they say, that this will be the time that will kick off. But we do thank you for your time this morning, Mr. Mondo Bani, former second vice president of the NBA. We're back in a moment. Stay with us.
Well, if you caught the paper review this morning, there is enough there to alarm you. Many of the stories are being taken from what was said on the floor of the Senate yesterday. Look at this one from New Telegraph. Insecurity, Nigeria's corporate existence under threat. That's according to the Senate. If you also look at what is on the front page of, is it Leadership now? Rising attacks on police may lead to full-scale insurgency in Southeast. That's also coming from the Senate. Senate on insecurity is what Blueprint has. Nigeria under siege of murderous non-state actors is also on their front page. So yes, the dailies do give you sufficient grounds as to why we're talking about this one this morning. And we have a former senator here with us. Senator Ayo Arise is a former chairman, House Committee on Privatization. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you. Good morning. Nice to see you again.
Good to see you too. I don't know if you have had time to peruse the papers this morning or if you caught the debate on the floor of the Senate yesterday, especially when they were talking about small and light weapons. And they say we have about 350 million of the 500 million, making rounds in West Africa. 350 million of them are domiciled here in Nigeria. Some very scary figures.
It is. It is worrisome. I mean, it's cause for serious concern for every Nigerian.
Indeed. What are your thoughts in terms of how we have handled this so far? I mean, when we look at how far we've come, let's even start from this year. Let's not go too far. Let's start from January this year. Because the threat, it would seem, a lot of people started getting the feel of it, maybe from when NSARS started. Yes, there was COVID and then lockdown and all of that. But from NSARS, there was a bit of apprehension in the land. And of course, the satisfaction being expressed there, that was towards the end of last year. And then from the beginning of this year, when we saw banditry on the rise, the fact that students were now being taken, with reckless abandon. And then we saw, then in the southeast of the country, we also saw what was happening in the southwest of the country, places that had hitherto experienced some relative peace and calm, coming under some form of attacks that were going on unchecked, raised the concern of a lot of people. How would you say that the state has responded to these attacks? Have they been convincing in the response?
It's, in terms of responses to what we see almost on a very regular basis now, ability to try and pursue maybe kidnappers and all that, attempt to locate them and stuff like that. Yes, it's a small attempt to try and respond, but it's not near what we're expecting or near what we really need at this time. When you look at the quantum of ammunition, 350 million. Where do we start from? We have such porous borders. People can come in from anywhere. And of course, there have been agitation. I am one of the believers of those who think Nigeria should allow people to bear their arms. Because when others have ammunition and you are totally helpless, they go on a rampage. For example, if these bandits realize that you might be carrying arms and you have even public transportation, that maybe half of them, and everybody has the right to bear arms, you will see that there will be mutually assured destruction. And it's going to be a way of deterrent. Of course, we've seen it. It's on you can see in modern times a lot of crisis in terms of gun, mass murder, by those people bearing arms. America has the right to bear arms. Every adult. You can go in, buy your guns.
Well, we will come to that example shortly. The example of America, which you have stated, the United States of America, and, even the challenge that they are currently facing.
Yes.
So there might be questions as to whether that's the best example that we can point to when it comes to what the solutions to our current challenges should be.
Yeah.
But we'll delve into that when we come back from this break. Please stay with us. Senator Ayo Arise is still with us in the studio, and you were just citing the example of the United States of America, saying that you think everybody should be allowed to bear arms in this country. Then we will know that, okay, we have mutually assured destruction.
Exactly.
It's called MAD. It is something that is very, prevalent in international relations when state actors, especially states, are talking about, nuclear weapons, and every state should be allowed to, develop nuclear weapons if they so please. That way, everybody will behave themselves, so to speak.
Exactly.
But when it comes to daily interactions, if we're to look at the example of the United States that has implemented or adopted that particular method, it hasn't quite worked, has it?
Oh, well, there is no situation that is absolute. America is trying to control deadly weapon. It is not the light arms, the type that we're saying we have over 350 million in Nigeria. When you have assault weapons and you can just go to a store and buy it, that's a completely different scenario. Now, for those people, America is working on ensuring that there is control. You must have proper identification. They must test you, whether you have any psychiatric problem or psychological problem, that you're not just going to take the weapon and start shooting people. These are the areas where they're trying to manage it. But when you sleep in your house, you sleep well, because nobody is just going to come in and kidnap you. Look at what happened in Insecurity recently. They went to a palace and carried a traditional ruler there. So supposing the man has ammunition, they wouldn't know if everybody has the right to bear arms in this country. You'll find out that there will be a level of deterrent on this assault, kidnapping, and all those stuff. It's not the perfect solution, but we cannot have a perfect solution because we already have the ammunition within the country. And look at yourself now. If I sleep in my house and we have situations already in Niger State, like we just mentioned, anything can happen. Abuja is not absolutely...
That is not...
I'm also the citizen.
So that might answer some questions. I mean, we've had this proposal that you're bringing forth now, even being put forward by some governors. I've heard the governor of Taraba State, the governor of Benue as well, saying that Nigerians should be allowed to carry arms. But when we look at this sort of security situation that we're currently facing, it might, and that's a very big might, answer some of it, make some people feel safe. However, the majority of the security crisis that we have right now are on institutions, say educational institutions, when bandits go and, pack students in their numbers away from their schools in the dead of the night. How does everybody owning arms solve that kind of problem? When they go to police stations, these are places that ordinarily have their own arm and ammunition.
Yes.
And they go there and they raid the place. They burn it. And that's what we've seen in the Southeast. That has happened more than once now. It even happened yesterday. You see policemen who traditionally are allowed to carry bare arms, being killed, mercilessly, it will seem. How is this solution going to stop this sort of hemorrhaging?
You're absolutely right in the situation where police stations are targets. Now, if that were just to be the only problem, the government can begin to fortify those police stations. There are many of these police stations in the rural areas that this ammunition we're talking about, many of them, you can count the number of guns.
Senator, these police stations that we're talking about, we're not in the rural areas.
Yes, I know, but this was...
headquarters in Imo State, next to the government house, came under attack.
That is a very worrisome scenario. If they could go and attack next door to the governor's house. But now that it has happened, you will know that they will have a solution. It's either you fortify those police stations and ensure that you train the policemen and give them proper ammunition, to repel such... I was just listening to the... was that the Deputy Commissioner of Police or Commissioner of Police on TV just a few minutes ago, that they were able to repel them. They killed some, and those ones too wounded some. It is not a normal situation in any country. So we are I mean, this has to be nipped in the bud because it can escalate to something much more serious.
Nipped in the bud?
Yes, it has to be.
This
Right
is
now, when you look
full-grown flower.
if it is full-grown, then that means we're already at war. But let's hope that we can still do something to ensure that those people, if we're able to apprehend them, and you fortify the police stations, but the question is, when you fortify police stations, how many policemen do you want to distribute around to guide every Nigerian? That is why I was advocating it's possible for this situation to be tempered down a little bit. For people, if you know that somebody you are trying to attack has some form of defense, then you will think twice. The planning will be longer. I believe these police station attacks were a little bit, they might have planned it, but it's a surprise to the police stations. Otherwise, they should be, now most police stations would be prepared that this can happen. And I believe they would have sufficient defense in terms of ammunition and support. Maybe the military will have to go and start moving in that direction to ensure that you don't just wake up, go and raid down a police station. What is next? If you're able to sack the police station, then we're all in problem.
I mean, just last week, we buried 11 soldiers in Benue. Yes, that is still a very sore point there. But let's quickly take this to Lagos now, because my colleagues have another guest on standby. Gentlemen.
Well, yeah, we do have Honorable Tajuddin Yusufu, who's a former chairman, House Committee on Capital Markets. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today on the program. Well, having seen where we are, there's been several calls as to what to do, how to do it, but it just appears as though we don't seem to perhaps decide on what exact steps to get us the kind of results that we require. Well, senators advocating, everyone will be allowed to bear arms. That's amending the Firearms Act. What's your impression of what we should be doing and how?
Thank you, Chamberlain. What the senator is advocating is a reflection of the frustration that Nigerians are confronted with because there is total collapse of governance. What we are seeing today is a cumulative effect of insensitivity, neglect, and deliberate attempt to undermine the system that you lead. When people complain of these arms, how did they get into Nigeria? They got into the border. How was the border are now so porous that such things get in without them being checked? It is not, I will not be part of those who will say it just started and been ongoing. Unfortunately, I'm big bold to say that under this present leadership, it became something else. Somebody was talking about body language when you were talking about judicial autonomy and what have you. The body language of the president encouraged these tendencies. How? What do I mean? You know, nobody opened his border to for people to come in unchecked. And when you attempt to check them, the unfortunate scenario of trying to say they are from this side or from not this side. It's only in Nigeria that a foreigner comes in unchecked and he gets citizenship ahead of those who are born in Nigeria. National ID card, if you go there today, working from any of our country, neighboring country, you get it easily. Once you have the right affiliation, ethnic-wise, religious-wise, we set up people. So what you are saying is that we have emboldened criminality. We have told them that you can do it here and go scot-free. Before now, in my own neighborhood where I grew up, and which I know Senator Arise will confirm, he's from Ikita, from Kogi, Kaba in Kogi State. The Fulani X-Men live with us peacefully. When they want to go and on your farm, they will tell the owner of the farm ahead of time that after you harvest, we are coming. They will pay for it. They will pay. If you have issue with them, mere reporting them to traditional rulers is enough to check them. But now, if you have an issue with a Fulani man in your area, your herdsman, believe you me, the police will advise you to abandon the case because the network is so strong that they will make the police, DP or whoever handle the case pay for doing the right thing. So what we are seeing is a symptom. We should go and cure the main issue. by the government taking responsibility and checkmating our borders and making the law a leveler. Making the law a leveler. What we do in this country presently is that we play politics and make mockery of serious matter. The governor of Benue State was chased, harassed. That's the chief security of the state. Did you hear anything? Was there anything said from those who should, rise to the occasion? And a group came up and took responsibility. What did we do? Nothing. So we will not get out of this until we genuinely have leadership who are committed to securing this nation and see Nigeria as one, not where you come from, not your ethnicity, not your religion, not your background of political tradition. The moment you become the leader of this country, you are the leader over those who voted for you, those who voted against you, those who like you, those who don't like you. Because posterity will not judge you based on who like you, does not like you. They judge you based on what you did as a leader. So I want to say that, yes, Birmingham is a issue. That's what even happening now. That's why you find the youth going to criminality to check themselves. How does it sound that you are a neighbor who was a young person? Some people walk in to kidnap your mother, your brothers, your sisters. You can do nothing. What does it sound? It takes special grace not to go into criminality in an attempt to check such tendencies. So
what do you
it's a
say,
failure of governance.
What do you say to the school of thought that believes that politicians appear to be either playing the ostrich or that there is a plan somewhere, some people are working on something? Because if we've got over 300 million arms out of, they say, 500 illegal ones in the country, and then they just say, look, well, they may do what they can with all of this rhetoric up there, but down there, people are just getting themselves ready because they seem to have lost faith and hope with the security agencies as things stand.
I agree absolutely with you. That a lot of us politicians are playing the ostrich, they know with body truth. A lot of who they say different things on platform and do different things. When they get to their environment or with these people. And I agree with the school of thought that believe that there is an agenda, because I don't see why these things will be so unchecked this long. It is before now. It used to be secluded areas, maybe one part of the country and what have you. Now we have armed men in every nook and cranny of Nigeria. Tell me where you come from. Go to the forest, your place, you find armed men. Majority of them are not Nigerians. Majority of them are not Nigerians. They find themselves into the hinterland, and the system protects them. So I want to assume that there's an agenda. I suspect that there's an agenda, and that agenda is to undermine the statehood of this nation, Nigeria. Unfortunately, it will not be anyone good. Even those who plan it, those who execute, and those who are supposed to be victims. None of us. And for those of us who are in political office who think that this is mere politics and rhetoric or it's an opportunity for advantage, I make bold to say that none of us, I repeat, none of us will be spared. Because what is coming is beyond what you're imagining.
So if you could just elaborate on that, what is there to gain in undermining the statehood of Nigeria, as you said? What is the game plan? There's a lot of talk about 2023. Is that the game plan? Is it beyond that? What do you see, really?
I see beyond 2023. I'm even scared we're going to have in 2023, the way things are going now. It's not about 2023. It's about the psyche of certain people who feel they should maintain certain advantage. There are these tendencies that feel that certain resources that is seen as belonging to one set of people should be theirs, and that there is a sense of superiority complex that some people want to breathe down everybody. We must realize that God has a reason why He created us together in this church, and that where your own rights stand, where that's where my end, where my own end does stand, and that there must be a mutual agreed respect for each other. Sincerely, I have not seen that. I have not seen that from the present leadership of this nation. I've seen an attempt by the leadership of this nation to have a double standard, to allow certain tendencies to take advantage and refuse to act as a when view. They will come with rhetorics. I ask you a question. What was said about what happened to the Benue State governor? Tell me, can anybody remember if anything was said or action was taken? What about those who came out to say, we did it? What happened to them? Or when you have this kind of thing and others are watching, they begin to, every human being does not want to is inferior.
I think the news is out there. The police did set up a committee. The army have gone there to set up a post, and so the army and the police have responded, and so that investigation is going on.
Responded to what? I said a group came out. A group came out to take responsibility. Have you forgotten that we did it? Hello. The Southeast, they were incident. IPOD denied the postulation that they were the one behind it. But the police say you are the one that behind it. We have to say that. But a group came out that we were the one that attacked the Benue State governor. Were they invited?
So it appears there's what, double standard? Is that what you're inferring?
All I'm saying is that there must be an approach that is seen as liberal, fair, just. We must, as leaders, demonstrate some sense of equity. Until that is done. Is the National Assembly helpless in this matter? My brother, I must tell you that we are just backing. The National Assembly make motion, make statement, make laws that are ignored. That is the truth.
Does that then mean that, what, they are rubber stamp?
On the most serious story, I can just say, we also rubber stamp. Yeah, there's still one or two persons who rise to the occasion to air their view, either you like it or not, or it's adhere to or not. But I want to believe that we should do much more better. We should do much more better. I give a classical example. If the National Assembly, the both chambers of National Assembly, on several occasions, condemn, made started statement about the former service chiefs, about their capability and inability to deliver as a well-being. Unfortunately, after they were removed and when the whole country mounted the same common pressure on the presidency, they were instantly given appointment. What that's telling you? That to say that we reward such inadequacies. So you can go to an office, misbehave, and whatever. And don't forget that those service chiefs left after about 5-6 sets of their junior had gone on retirement. Do you know that done to the psyche and the morale of officers? Then there's should the National Assembly clear such men of a truth? Are we supposed to claim men we have indicted?
Let me take this to Senator Rishi in Abuja. I mean, you've listened to Honorable speaking about major issues, talking about rewarding, according to him, inadequacies. He talked about rewarding inadequacies, spoke about the body language of the president specifically, and a couple of other things. Double standard. I'm just trying to use the terms he used so you can respond to that. He has spoken about these issues, and for a lot of people, it resonates with them. So I'd like you to respond to those issues, but we have to take this break. So please join us again. So yes, there's also that angle of illegal arms proliferation. But Senator Rishi, I'd like you to respond pointedly to the issues raised by Honorable Yusuf.
Can you hear?
Can you hear me? I want you to respond. I mean, just before we went on that break, I was building up to the question. So if you could respond to the issues raised about perceived double standard, rewarding inadequacies, the body language of the president. He was particular about that seems to be fueling a lot of the crisis we're seeing in the area of insecurity. So could you respond to that then?
Thank you very much. TJ dwelled more on the political side of the issue. But the way I look at this is we've had several presidents, and the issue of security had lingered in this country. It's getting worse and worse by the day. But I look at the situation we find ourselves in Nigeria today. We should ask us, as individuals, Are we helping ourselves? Are we helping this country? Are we helping the government? For example, the government decided on this name registration so that we can identify ourselves. But already, you put Nigerians as agents to do registration. They will be looking for loopholes on how to sabotage the process. At the IDP camps, the agents could do what you call a bypass for somebody like an amputee because they don't have fingerprints. And you discover that within the pace of about 3 months, there are cases close to 200,000 bypasses. They're just registering people. But the good thing is that NIMC has a system, and they've been able to detect this. And all those will be wiped out. And those agents will not get paid, for such. These are efforts of the government to combat some of these problems. But these are being done by Nigerians.
So do you agree with him?
Ammunition to Nigeria.
Well, Senator, just a moment.
People import ammunition to Nigeria. Who are these people importing them?
Right.
Well,
Senator, do you agree with that point? Pardon me. He raised points about rewarding inadequacies. He raised points about. Pardon me. I want you to respond to those points before we wind down. And I'd like to know if you agree with him or not. The rewarding of inadequacies he spoke about, the body language double standards that he perceives from the president. I mean, you said he went political, but this insecurity situation is what everybody sees. I don't think it knows who is APC or PDP. So, responding to those points specifically, do you agree with him on that?
Oh, yes. If we are discussing unemployment, which is a major problem fueling this insecurity, I would totally agree. When maybe it's only one president that we can rightly say that it's not been a little bit partisan in terms of favoritism. And that most people would acclaim Obasanjo for that. But if I were president today, the chances are that it's those people that I know. But this is not right. We know that is not right. But is it the reason for this proliferation of ammunition? Is that the way we are going to change the orientation of the man there? So for us, once we continue to make and to advocate and challenge these processes and say, look, this is not right, and the press is playing quite a good role. Individuals are doing that. But I do not think that that is the cause of this serious problem of ammunition and insecurity. But it has its own fact, it has its own role to play there. But I think if we are going to be sincere to ourselves, we as Nigerians, we all accept that responsibility, because that is not why some people are burning police stations in Imo State. It cannot be. So if we know this issue of the fact that appointments somehow has not been truly national, if that is what it's saying, fine. But that is not the cause of this security.
Now, some people will say that perhaps, inadvertently you hit the nail on the head when you talk about Nigerians. You say, we as Nigerians. Exactly. In recent times, it was seen that some people have begun to see themselves as other than Nigerian. And that's, it's a big issue. It's what's happening in the Southeast. It's also we saw that happen over the weekend when people started clamoring for another state in Ibadan, the Oyo State capital. Big issues as to whether or not people are owning up and answering that name, Nigerian. But, Senator, it's an ongoing conversation.
Oh, yes.
We have to thank you for coming on Sunrise Today this morning. Senator Ayo Arishe has been speaking with us here in the studio. We've also had with us Honorable Tajuddin Yusuf, who is the former Chairman House Committee on Capital Markets. Honorable, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the program this morning. Whatever it is, answer and own up to your name, Nigerian, if you truly see yourself as that. And ask if you're doing well by the country and honoring her name. Thank you so much for watching this morning. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
I'm Kayode Okikelu.
I'm Ayo Makide. Have a good day.
I'm Chamberlain, so I will see you next time.